Hey everyone, welcome back to Independent Land Rover. We purchased a Land Rover Discovery for $1,000 and with the goal to fix it up, level up, and our goal ultimately in a year is to buy a V8 Defender 90. So if we recall on that video, the $1,000 Discovery we bought had a knock in the engine. The engine has a knock. We are removing that engine. We are rebuilding another engine that came out of our $800 Discovery for our off-road build. We have torn it down. That engine was seized up but had low mileage, so we tore it down, cleaned everything up, we rebuilt it, and now we are at the stage which is the most exciting, most enjoyable stage for me.
I'm very excited. I'm very excited.
Which is rebuilding the engine. Everything is clean, everything is inspected, we have all new seals and gaskets, bearings, everything's ready to go, and we are going to put this engine together. All right, before we get started, as you can see, we have everything clean. I like to lay everything out so I can see what I have, count everything. The worst is to start assembling an engine or anything you're assembling and then you're missing one bolt and you gotta go find it. Everything has nicely been washed. We have all the new parts. On this, what we're gonna be using is a stud kit. On these older engines, now the aluminum over time gets fatigued. We see a lot of issues with the bolts pulling the threads out, so we like to use these ARP stud kits. And then I have all the new seals, gaskets, hardware, everything ready to go. We have our studs in, everything cleaned up, ready to put our gasket on. So a little note here on these Rover V8 engines, very common issue on them is that they leak coolant from the front and the rear of the heads through this jacket over here. So this is the cooling jacket over here. As you can see, there's a very thin little piece of head gasket material to seal this up. So what we like to do is just use some gasket spray. This just makes the front and rear tacky, helps with that sealant. So generally we see without it, they last like 50,000 miles. With this, they almost double the amount of mileage. Time to put the washers on these studs. We want these to be nice and dry, no lubricant, no dirt. We have to clean the top of the cylinder head really well and make sure these washers go on dry. So why we do that is when these get torqued, any moisture, lubrication, any dirt is going to affect the way that this torques down. So really key to keep this dry. So next up we have the ARP lubricant that comes in the kit. So what they want us to do is put a little lubricant onto the threads as well as onto the nut, into the threads of the nut, and then screw these on by hand. Now there's a little bit of a different torque sequence than the factory because of the studs. Whereas the factory ones were stretch bolts where we turn it 90 degrees, 90 degrees. These are fixed torque. So if we go by the fitting instructions, our first torque is 25 foot-pounds, then 50 foot-pounds, and then 70 foot-pounds. So we'll do our initial torque to 25. There's also a sequence, same as the factory, on which ones to torque down in which order. All right, so time to put the lifters in. We have our camshaft in, it's all lubricated. The lifters, I have left them soaking in oil. Now it is important on these to put them back in the same hole. If you're reusing your camshaft and reusing the lifters, they wear according to each lobe, so make sure they go back in the same position that they came out. All right, time to install the push rods. Now if you recall from the previous video, this engine had seized up and the valves hit the pistons. So we've repaired the heads, we've got the valves redone. What's important to check is that the push rods aren't bent, because when a valve came up, weak point, these sometimes bend. So the best way to check that is roll it on a flat surface. we have our timing setup done. Everything's lined up top dead center. Now it is time to tighten down the rockers. You don't want to do this before doing the timing assembly, otherwise stand a chance of the valve hitting the pistons. Now that the intake is on, real careful, don't want to drop any bolts or anything down into the intake. As soon as you crank the engine over, if you don't know, it'll impact the pistons and destroy the engine. So cheap insurance, what we always do on every engine, little hint, take an old intake gasket, a platinum gasket, put some tape on it and just fit it back on. So now while you're working, nothing's going to fall down in the engine. Another thing, you can put some tape over the top. This is just an easy way. I call it my cheap insurance tool.
We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
All right, another little fun fact we have for you, full of fun facts. The latest bolts on these have a little V stamped into them. These are actually aftermarket bolts, which are great, but even the factory ones have a little V stamped. The earlier ones that didn't have tended to stretch, and these used to loosen up. So make sure they have a little V stamp to them.
Hi, my name is Jorge, and today I'll be changing horn buttons, park brake boot, and transfer case boot. And just make sure everything's solid, not making sure. Put it back, that way you can be able to test it, make sure it works. Moment of truth. Would it work or would it not? Oh, there's no battery.
A great success!
Oh, and here we're back again with another. So now we continue with the boot. First of all, what we do is try this down a little bit, and it can come back out. Thank you. It was a pleasure to show you how to change all these items. Until next time.
All right, guys, thank you for watching another video at Independent. We are pretty much wrapped up with this engine build, a few little items to wrap up on it, and then we will be removing the engine from the vehicle and installing this one. Check us out in the next video. see how that car progresses, and then getting it sold. So please like, subscribe, leave comments. We love to hear what you think, and we'll see you in the next video.